Hello again, and today we're going to talk about formatted output. And what do I mean by formatted output? By formatted output, I'm talking about uh, a way of printing out text and inserted variables that doesn't require you to use the print or println functions and you have to concatenate things with the plus sign, and it gets very messy. It's a better way of printing out data. So let's go through this and see how it works. So I've got two strings that have been initialized to hello and world separately. Here's how we have done it in the past. System out println I say plus str1 plus space plus str2. Alright, that works, but this way is better and more flexible. Here I'm using the system out format method, and I create my output string. I say %s space %s %n, and then after that I put the variables that I want to insert wherever the %s is. So this is going to take str1, put it here. It's going to take str2, put it here. And then at the end it says %n. Why is it doing that? Why are we saying %n instead of /n? We want to, when we print this out, we want it to go to a new line. Why use %n? The reason is different systems, different operating systems treat the /n code differently. On some operating systems it works, some operating systems will ignore it, won't know what to do with it. So the %n is a way of indicating a new line that will work on any operating system. It's when they came up with the original escape codes, everything was assumed to be running on Unix, and all Unix systems recognized it. Now we have so many different operating systems and they have different rules that the escape codes aren't as reliable. So they said, well, let's come up with %n, and %n will work on any operating system. Alright, so that's why we have a %n there. So this is easier to deal with because, first of all, you don't have to do all this plus and double quotes and all this kind of business. And you can switch the variables around more easily. You can reformat the string more easily. So that's using the format method with strings. I also have an example here with some double values. So we have a double value of 83.432, another double value of 48.11299, and we know that with just the println method, it's not going to format numbers. You have no control over how the numbers get formatted. It just however the default is. But if we use the format command, we can use the %f for printing out floating point numbers, whether it's a double or a float. And there's also another way of doing it just for integers, which is %d, but I'm going to give you a link to some pages that go through all the different possibilities for formatting, so I'm not going to go into them into detail here. So here we have d1 times d2 equals, and then we have the plus and the computation, and then d1 divided by d2 equals plus the computation. Here we have d1 times d2 equals %f, some spaces, dl divided by d2 equals %f, and then the %n for new line. And as with the previous example with the strings, we now have our parameters at the end. And you can have any number of parameters. It can be 1, it can be 100. There's no limitation on the number of parameters that you can use in the format statement. Now here's an extension of the format statement where I'm putting a .2 in front of the F, and that means show the answer with 2 decimal places. And here's another option where I'm using 10.2, and what that means is allocate 10 spaces for the response with including 2 decimal spaces and right justify it, because usually when we put out a column of numbers we want the numbers to be right justified in the column so that the decimal place always lines up. So you want that to have all of the numbers right justified, which means if you have 10 spaces and the number is only 5 spaces, it will go to the far right of those 10 spaces. Okay, and here's another little trick. The format method also exists in the string object. So I can create a string S, and use a string format to put the output into the string. And then I'm going to just print out the string. But this is very useful. It's just another way that you can use the format command. It's very flexible. You can use it in a lot of different ways. Alright, so let's compile this and run it. Okay, so you can see, going back up to the top, we were printing out I say hello world 2 different ways. The result is exactly the same, but using system out format is more flexible, easier to deal with. Going down to the doubles, here is the output using just the format, system out format, and you can see it's not that readable. Here it is using the %f, and the %f, if you don't tell it how many decimal places to use, it'll use whatever its default is. The default here appears to be 6 decimal places. I don't know if that's always the case, but normally you will want to control the output by saying how many decimal places you want it to be. So here is where I've specified I want it to be 2 decimal places. And then we use the 10.2 format to say allocate 10 spaces for the number and right justify the number within those 10 spaces. So then if I do a column of numbers, they will all line up with the decimal places in the right place. And finally, here's where I have used the string.format method to take the same formatted string and put it, instead of printing it out, I'm storing it in an S variable, and then later I'm printing out the S variable. It's just another thing you can do with the format command. Okay, so there's lots more that can be done in Java with formatting. This is just a beginning. I'm going to include on the web page some links to pages that have a lot more detailed information. It's a good thing to know. So that's it for today.